Have you ever trusted someone so deeply that betrayal wasn't even a possibility in your mind? Imagine this: your millionaire husband, charming, respected, adored by your family, walks into your brother's luxury wedding with his ex as his guest, while you, his wife, are expected to smile through it all. Welcome to a story that isn't just about infidelity. It's about a silent storm, a carefully crafted revenge, and the rise of a woman who refused to stay broken. In today's video, you'll witness a journey from suspicion to confrontation, from gaslighting to empowerment, and ultimately to a public reckoning that no one saw coming. I never imagined that a simple Sunday dinner would become the catalyst for dismantling the marriage I thought was unshakable. We were in the thick of a warm family meal, laughter drifting, voices soft, conversations familiar, when he dropped the bomb. My husband Elijah looked across the table at me with steady eyes and said, "I invited my ex to your brother's wedding. She's basically family now. If you trust me, you'll understand." The room froze. My mother paused mid-serving roasted potatoes. My father's hand quivered over his wine glass. My brother Adam's fork was suspended in midair. Claire, my future sister-in-law, gave me a hard nudge under the table. "Hannah, your ex-girlfriend?" Adam asked, voice low but thunderous. "To my wedding, the one I'm having next month?" He didn't wait for me to respond. With a tone meant to sound casual, Elijah answered as if rehearsed. "We were all so close. She belongs in the family." I smiled carefully. That was my defense. I said, "Of course I trust you." But inside, my heart was pounding and my mind was racing, because by the time he uttered those words, I had already retrieved a name and number from my phone. Isaac Morrison, Hannah's husband. I'd saved it just hours ago. I watched the way my parents' eyes darted uncertainly at one another, their brain cells scrambling to recall a memory of a Hannah who had ever been part of their story. My mother forced a polite nod while my face remained calm. Meanwhile, Claire's grip under the table tightened, the latest secret we both carried. How dare he weave lies so skillfully in front of my family, inviting them into his illusion? He was trying to recruit everyone into a narrative to make the lie feel normal, and I just sat there, cutting my chicken into smaller, more precise bites, trying not to let the tremor in my fingers slip into the cadence of my voice. Dinner continued as though nothing had happened. Elijah told tales of how Hannah had helped with a charity auction, how she'd always been involved in the family's life. My parents murmured assent, desperate to believe. Adam squeezed my hand, concern flickering in his eyes. Claire sat rigid beside me, lips tight, anger coiled. By dessert, my stomach turned. As Elijah cleared plates, he launched into a story of Hannah's new position at a marketing firm uptown, exactly what his LinkedIn stories had already hinted. I nodded numbly, while my mind cataloged every inconsistency. Later, in the kitchen, Adam cornered me. "Esther, I don't know what's happening, but this doesn't make sense. I've never met this woman. You've never mentioned her." He spoke with urgency. "Why is he treating her like she's part of us?" I looked away, scraping a plate, forcing calm into my voice. "Maybe you don't remember." But inside, I told him, "Not yet." He tried to press me further, to pull the truth from me, but I whispered, "Trust me." I needed time to collect everything he'd tried to hide. Back in our car, the silence was oppressive. We drove home under a canopy of city lights. His hand on my thigh felt like a tether to the life I had believed in, but inside I was unraveling. 4 years of marriage reduced in an instant to a performance of normalcy. Betrayal was blooming between us like poison in the bloodstream. At a red light, his grip tightened. "Thank you for being so understanding about Hannah," he murmured. "I knew you would be." I nodded, my voice calm. "When did she get back to New York?" He hesitated. "A few months ago." Maybe. Another lie. Because her Instagram, which I had watched closely for hours, proved she had never left. Brunches in Soho, street runs in Central Park, photos tagged at Manhattan galleries, and a wedding framed with Isaac Morrison. The evidence was mounting in plain sight. He drifted into the shower when we got home. I stood at our 10th floor window, the cityscapes twinkling like coded messages. Somewhere, Hannah Morrison, his ex, was getting ready for my brother's wedding. Was her husband aware? Or was he as blind as I'd been until now? His shower stopped. He would emerge, kiss my forehead, and pretend all was right in our world. Meanwhile, I replayed every business trip, late meeting, new cologne bottle, mysterious credit card charge. I watched the naked shell of our marriage begin to collapse around me. But in that moment, standing by the window, I made a decision. If he wanted to bring her to my family's celebration, she would not come alone. Isaac Morrison would be my +1, and together we would turn his grand deception into their ruin. So tonight, right now, this is where it begins. I'll wear armor in the form of proof and truth. I'll walk through that rehearsal dinner carrying a weapon he never saw coming, the certainty that he can't deny what can't be denied. If you believe that betrayal deserves exposure and that the truth must surface, stay with me. Let's follow every step as I dismantle this illusion, piece by piece. The morning after that dinner, sunlight spilled through our bedroom window, soft and golden, the kind of light that used to mean peace, but peace had become foreign. That glow only reminded me of how easy it was for Elijah to sleep soundly beside me after detonating a truth bomb at the family table. He hummed in the shower, the same way he always did when he felt smugly in control. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of last night pressing against my chest. My mind wasn't foggy with confusion anymore. It was sharp, clear, and cold. When he left for work, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, I waited exactly 10 minutes before I reached for my laptop. That was the moment everything changed. It started with a simple curiosity. Who exactly was Hannah now? I typed her name, Hannah Morrison, into Instagram's search bar. I told myself it was just to confirm she was still in Seattle, far away from my life. But then the first profile appeared. A familiar face smiled back at me from her profile picture. Long blonde hair, flawless skin, and that practiced, effortless kind of confidence that had always made me feel replaceable. Except the surprise wasn't her photo. It was her location tag. New York City, not Seattle, not 3,000 miles away, Manhattan. My pulse quickened. Her most recent post was from 2 days ago. Brunch in Soho, avocado toast plated beside a mimosa glass. The post before that, a morning run in Central Park. The one before that, a charity gala. She wore a champagne-colored gown and smiled like a woman with nothing to hide. I kept scrolling backward through her curated world until I reached a post from 2 years ago. A wedding photo. Hannah and a tall man with dark hair, her caption glowing beneath it. 2 years with my forever. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. So, Hannah was married. Married for 2 years. To Isaac Morrison, a real estate developer with a verified business profile. And yet, my husband had called her his family. I felt my stomach twist. I clicked through Isaac's business page next. Morrison Properties. A sleek website, glossy photos of city skylines, and his smiling headshot. Everything about him screamed success and credibility. But there was one small detail that made my blood run cold. A conference listing. Boston Real Estate Summit, March 15th and 17. The same weekend, Elijah had gone to Boston for an investor meeting. My breath caught. I remembered that weekend perfectly. Elijah had called me from his hotel room, panning the camera around, showing me the view, the desk, the coffee cup. Except for one brief second, the camera had caught the hotel lobby behind him. I remembered the gold accents, the chandelier, the marble floor. Now, staring at Isaac's conference photos, my heart began to race. The same lobby, the same chandelier, the same hotel. Every nerve in my body felt electrified. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. Deliberate, practiced. I grabbed a notebook and started writing dates. The Boston trip, the late-night client dinner, the new gym, schedule that never produced soreness or workout stories, his sudden fitness kick, the cologne he'd never worn before, the shirts I hadn't bought him. Each detail was a puzzle piece, and for the first time, I saw how they fit together. I opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Tax Documents. But the truth was far from financial. It was my digital war chest. I started screenshotting everything. Hannah's tagged locations, Elijah's credit card statements, every clue I could find. At first, it felt surreal, like I was starring in a crime drama, except I was both detective and victim. The farther I dug, the clearer it became. Elijah hadn't simply made a mistake. He had built an entire architecture of lies. Her posts painted a picture of two overlapping lives. When Elijah said he was entertaining clients from Tokyo, Hannah posted a photo of wine glasses clinking over dinner at 11 Madison Park, the kind of restaurant that required reservations months in advance. When Elijah claimed to be in Philadelphia for a conference, Hannah shared a photo of herself lounging in a suite at the Greenwich Hotel. Every lie he told me had a corresponding post in her perfect little digital diary. I traced their movements like a map of deceit. Boston, Miami, the Hamptons, each location a dot connected by lies. And somewhere, always just off frame, was my husband. By the time the sun set, my desktop was a gallery of betrayal. My fingers trembled not from sadness anymore, but from adrenaline. I wasn't crying. I wasn't breaking down. I was collecting proof, because proof meant power. That night, Elijah came home humming again, loosened his tie, kissed my forehead. He had no idea that while he showered, I had memorized his entire schedule, cross-referenced it with Hannah's posts, and printed the receipts. I watched him move around our apartment like a stranger rehearsing for a part he didn't deserve. Every word he said was carefully measured, every gesture meant to sustain the illusion. And I smiled, playing my role perfectly, because I had a new goal now. Not to confront him yet, not to scream or demand answers. No, I would build the truth so thoroughly, so undeniably, that when the time came, he wouldn't have room to lie. He wanted to bring Hannah to my brother's wedding as a guest of honor, so I would bring her husband. And at that moment, when the truth came crashing down under the chandeliers of the Waldorf ballroom, I wanted him to look me in the eyes and finally see who he had underestimated. For now, I'd stay quiet. For now, I'd play the part of the loving, unsuspecting wife. But inside, I was already sharpening my revenge with every screenshot, every receipt, every memory. Because when the lies finally ended, only the truth would remain. And I intended to make it unforgettable. The next Sunday dinner came faster than I expected, but I was ready this time. Not for confrontation. No, not yet. But for observation. I wanted to see him spin his web, to hear him lie so smoothly that my parents would believe every word. I wanted to understand just how good he was at deception. Elijah arrived at my parents' house carrying a bouquet of hydrangeas, smiling like the model husband everyone envied. He kissed my mother's cheek, shook my father's hand, and greeted my brother Adam with casual warmth. To anyone watching, he looked like perfection wrapped in a designer suit. But to me, he was an actor stepping onto a stage. My family's dining room the set, and we his unwilling audience. "Your mom's roast smells amazing," he said, slipping his arm around my waist. His hand rested there just long enough for my father to notice. A performance of affection, a gesture of control. When we sat down, the atmosphere hummed with polite conversation. My father poured wine, my mother passed the potatoes, Claire complimented the centerpiece. And just when the evening began to feel normal, Elijah picked up his knife and fork and started his show. "You know," he said casually, sawing into his chicken, "Hannah helped organize that charity auction for the library a few years back. Remember, darling?" My mother blinked, unsure. I don't think— Of course you do. Elijah interrupted smoothly. It was for the library fundraiser. You loved her energy. My mother hesitated. Her polite smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd never organized a charity auction in her life, only helped at the annual book sale. But Elijah's voice was so confident, so authoritative, that she second-guessed her own memory. Such a sweet girl, he continued, stacking lies like bricks. She's been dying to see everyone again. Since she's back in town for business, it just made sense. Across the table, Claire's hand found my knee. Her fingers tightened. A silent message that said, "He's lying, and we both know it." Adam frowned. "Wait, Hannah, that was your ex, right? The one you dated before Esther?" Elijah didn't even blink. "A lifetime ago. She's basically family." That phrase again. Basically family. I wanted to laugh at the irony. My brother looked between us, confused. My parents exchanged glances, trying to recall memories that didn't exist. The lie was growing roots in their minds, while Elijah watered it with charm. And all I could do was sit there, smiling like a woman completely at ease. Every instinct screamed to call him out, to flip the table, to shout that Hannah wasn't basically family. She was currently married, and possibly still sleeping with my husband, but not yet. Not until I had the perfect stage for his downfall. So instead, I smiled. "Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart." The fork slipped from Adam's hand. "I don't remember meeting any Hannah." Elijah's smile didn't falter. "You were probably at Columbia that weekend. She was around a lot during that time. Too smooth, too rehearsed. Adam had gone to Columbia, yes, a 40-minute train ride from home. He was here almost every weekend, he'd have remembered. But Elijah said it with such conviction that even my father's brow softened. "Ah," my father said, lifting his glass, "if she's important to both of you—" "She is," Elijah replied, finally meeting my eyes. His tone carried something new, not a request, not even a challenge, but a test. He wanted to see how far he could go before I broke. I passed him the butter dish, smiled again. "Of course, honey." He grinned, victorious, unaware that every word he spoke was ammunition I was collecting for later. For the rest of dinner, he wove stories. How Hannah had spent 4th of July at our non-existent shore house. How she knew all the family stories. How she once volunteered with my mother. My parents nodded, puzzled but polite. They wanted to believe their charming son-in-law, but I saw the cracks forming. Small, invisible fractures that only someone watching closely could notice. Adam's jaw tightening, Claire's eyes narrowing, my mother's hand pausing mid-gesture, uncertain whether to agree or correct, my father's polite chuckles sounding slightly forced. Each crack was a sign that Elijah's performance, flawless for years, was beginning to splinter. When dessert came, I barely tasted my mother's apple pie. It sat heavy on my tongue, like sawdust. Elijah poured more wine, told another story, and my family, bound by politeness, kept smiling. After dinner, in the kitchen, Adam found me again. His voice was low. "Esther, something's wrong with him." "I know," I said softly. He stared at me, waiting. "Then why aren't you saying anything?" I looked at the pile of plates in the sink, at the bubbles forming around my hands. "Because I need him to keep talking." Adam frowned, confused, but I didn't explain. How could I? How could I tell him that every time Elijah lied, I was writing mental notes, collecting evidence of his patterns, his tone, his phrases? The more he lied, the more obvious his truth became. That night, on the drive home, the silence between us was louder than any argument. Jazz played faintly from the radio, the same playlist Elijah always used when he wanted to fill the void with something safe. His hand rested on my thigh again, possessive, practiced. "You were amazing tonight," he said. "So understanding. That's what I love about you. You never get jealous." Jealous? The word burned. He still thought this was about jealousy. as if inviting his ex to my brother's wedding was a harmless social gesture, and I was some insecure wife who needed reassurance. He didn't see the truth yet, that I was no longer trying to understand him. I was studying him. When we reached home, he disappeared into his office, pretending to check emails. I stood by the window again, watching the city lights flicker like Morse code. Somewhere out there, Hannah was posting photos, liking comments, smiling into cameras, oblivious to the storm brewing just blocks away. I whispered into the quiet apartment, "Keep lying, Elijah. Keep digging your own grave." Because the cracks in his performance weren't just showing, they were widening. And soon, the perfect husband, the charming storyteller, would have nowhere left to hide. He thought he was in control, but the truth was he had already lost the moment he believed I wasn't paying attention. I stopped sleeping, not entirely, but sleep became something I visited, not lived in. Every night, once Elijah drifted off beside me, I opened my laptop under the soft glow of my bedside lamp and continued what I'd started, building my case. It no longer felt like suspicion. It was investigation, cold, focused, ruthless. I'd created a folder on my desktop called Tax Documents, the kind of label no one would ever open. Inside, dozens of screenshots were neatly organized by date, location, and lie. Elijah didn't know it yet, but I was mapping the architecture of his betrayal in high definition. The first thing I noticed was how consistent his lies were. Every fabricated business trip coincided with a post on Hannah's Instagram that she probably thought was innocent. But to me, they were time-stamped evidence. Take March 15th to 17. Elijah had told me he was in Boston for an emergency investor summit. He sent me a video call from his hotel room. For a split second, I saw the lobby. White marble floors, golden chandeliers, massive planters. I'd thought nothing of it then. But when I matched it to a photo from Hannah's account, a champagne glass held by a perfectly manicured hand, the caption, Boston vibes, with a view of the exact same chandelier, I realized it wasn't a coincidence. Then came the receipts, literal ones. I never used to check our credit card statements. Elijah handled the money while I paid utilities and did the grocery runs. But that week, I logged in for the first time in months, and it felt like breaking into a stranger's life. April 22nd, $407 at 11 Madison Park. He said he was having dinner with a Tokyo-based client. Meanwhile, Hannah posted a photo that same night with a heart emoji and the caption, "Treating myself." The wine glass beside her bore the same label Elijah had mentioned in passing when describing his client dinner. May 6th, $2,847 at Cartier. Our anniversary wasn't for another 6 months. My jewelry box hadn't seen a new addition in over a year, but Hannah's ears suddenly featured pearl earrings. The same week, she posted, "When he knows your style better than you do." Coincidence? No, not anymore. I took photos of the statements, printed backups, and stored them in a manila envelope in a shoebox under the bed. I was building a wall of truth he couldn't talk his way out of. I began visiting the places he claimed to be. One Tuesday, I called in sick and drove to his gym during his usual workout window. His car wasn't there, but I found it parked 14 blocks away, at a boutique hotel with a valet stand and sleek black doors. 2 hours later, Hannah posted a selfie from that hotel's lounge. The caption read, "Client lunch vibes." I could have screamed, but instead I saved the post, cropped the photo, and added it to the timeline I'd drawn across 3 sheets of printer paper taped together in our guest room. The pattern was so obvious now that it hurt. Every golf trip matched Hannah's spa weekend. Every late-night meeting was mirrored by a dinner post tagged NYC nights on her profile. I checked timestamps, weather conditions, even background reflections. I found one story where Elijah's reflection showed up faintly in the window behind her. It was sickening. Not just the lies, but the effort it took to maintain them. He had built an entire second life, and he was arrogant enough to believe I'd never notice. I began tracking his gym schedule more precisely, his new cologne habits, the sudden appearance of luxury clothing items I'd never seen him wear before. He was getting careless. On a Friday morning, he came out of the bedroom freshly shaved and dressed in a casual blazer. He said he was picking Hannah up from the airport, her flight arriving at 3 p.m. I nodded and flipped a pancake I'd never eat. According to Hannah's Instagram story the night before, she was at a wine bar in Soho. Not only was she not arriving from anywhere, she was already here. He said she was staying at the Marriott in Times Square. But I had already confirmed with Isaac. She had a reservation at the St. Regis, the same place Elijah had a $942 charge 2 weeks earlier. He was nesting his lies inside each other like Russian dolls, confident I wouldn't look inside. But I was looking, and I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was weaponizing it. Every post, every charge, every lie, they were now part of a carefully arranged dossier. One day soon, I would lay it all out like a lawyer before a jury, and I'd let him explain in front of the people he had manipulated the most. That night, I sat alone in the living room, flipping through the printed receipts. The city outside was quiet. Elijah was at the gym. Hannah hadn't posted anything in 4 hours, but I wasn't waiting for a new clue. I had enough. I knew where he'd been, who he'd been with, and how many times he had chosen someone else, someone married just like him, over the life we'd built. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. I just took out a blank page and wrote one name at the top, Isaac Morrison. Because the final piece of the puzzle wasn't Elijah. It wasn't Hannah. It was the other betrayed spouse, the man who thought he was married to a loyal wife. It was time we compared notes. I stared at the blinking cursor for what felt like hours. The email field was filled in, isaacmorrisonproperties.com. His company's site had listed it openly, never suspecting a stranger would someday use it to start a fire. What do you say to a man whose life you're about to shatter, the way yours has already been? I must have typed and deleted 20 versions. Too cold, too vague, too dramatic, too informal. Every draft felt like a grenade, but I needed to throw it. Finally, I settled on something that was impossible to misinterpret. Subject: your wife is attending my brother's wedding. Message: as my husband's guest. I didn't sign it, I didn't explain, I didn't add emojis or soften the edges. I just hovered over the send button for a long second, then clicked. 11:47 a.m. Then I shut my laptop, grabbed my keys, and drove to my favorite coffee shop, a quiet place with good lattes and terrible Wi-Fi. I didn't want distractions. I didn't want social media. I wanted silence. My phone sat on the table, untouched. Hours passed. The barista asked me twice if I needed anything else. The rain started, stopped, started again. Still nothing. Maybe I'd made a mistake. Maybe Isaac wouldn't care. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he'd delete the message and move on. Then, at 5:15 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed. A single reply. I've been suspicious for months. Let's meet. 7 words that felt like a curtain rising on Act 2. I didn't hesitate. I typed back, Starbucks, Pearl Street, Monday, 10:00 a.m. He responded instantly, I'll bring proof. Proof, as if I hadn't already built a mountain of it. But still, something in his words felt like backup, reinforcement, a second witness to this twisted performance. Monday came. I left the apartment at my usual time but didn't turn toward work. Instead, I headed downtown toward the financial district. The Starbucks on Pearl was buzzing with lawyers, bankers, and oblivious professionals clutching their lattes like lifelines. I found a quiet corner table with a view of the door and sat down. At exactly 10:00 a.m., he walked in, Isaac Morrison. I recognized him from Hannah's photos. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark circles under his eyes, and a quiet intensity in the way he moved. There was something cautious about him, like a man who'd learned not to trust too quickly. He spotted me immediately and crossed the room without a word. He sat down across from me, pulling a manila envelope from his leather messenger bag before even ordering coffee. "I brought receipts," he said flatly. 6 words, 6 knives. He pushed the envelope across the table. Inside, a timeline of his own. Hotel bills from Miami, Boston, and New York, credit card charges from restaurants, spas, and luxury boutiques. A photo of Hannah in the Miami Ritz-Carlton. Time-stamped Valentine's weekend. A dinner receipt from 11 Madison Park, a $3,200 jewelry store charge. Dated a week after she claimed to be working late. She said the Miami trip was a corporate retreat, he said, his voice detached. Her company hasn't done one in 3 years. I pulled out my phone and opened my own evidence folder. Elijah's investor meetings line up with every single one of those dates. Same cities, same hotels. Isaac gave a bitter laugh. She saved him in her phone as Pilates instructor. I found out when her actual Pilates instructor called about rescheduling. We sat there for the next hour like detectives, arranging our findings into a shared narrative. On napkins, no less. Timelines drawn in pen, arrows connecting business trips to romantic weekends. Everything matched, too perfectly. "They've been at this for at least 6 months, he said, staring at the mess of receipts. "Maybe longer." I nodded. "And now they want to waltz into my brother's wedding like they're just old friends reuniting." Isaac leaned back, eyes narrowed. "They're planning something, or at least Elijah is." "He's obsessed with the seating chart," I said. "Keeps asking if Hannah will have a clear view of the ceremony." He rolled his eyes. "She told me she's dieting for some work gala coming up. Bought a new dress, $3,000, burgundy Versace." I knew that dress. I'd seen the receipt buried in our joint statement. We both stared at the pile of evidence between us. 2 strangers brought together by betrayal. 2 spouses who'd spent months sleeping beside liars. Isaac asked quietly, "What do you want to do with all this?" I looked him in the eye. "We confront them. Together." His brow raised. "At the wedding?" I nodded. "They want to attend it together, so let's give them what they want, just not how they expected." Isaac smiled for the first time. It wasn't a happy smile. It was sharp, dangerous. "You mean I come as your +1? I matched his energy. "Exactly. Let's show up side by side, in front of the whole family. Let them try to lie their way out of that." He extended a hand. "Deal." We shook on it, like co-conspirators, like people who had nothing left to lose but their dignity, and were ready to reclaim it. We didn't drink the coffee. It sat between us, growing colder by the minute as we scribbled over napkins like detectives cracking a cold case. There was something absurd and oddly poetic about it. 2 strangers, both betrayed, reconstructing the architecture of their spouse's affair in a Starbucks corner booth. Isaac leaned over the timeline we were building. "So, Valentine's weekend in Miami. She told me it was a top performer retreat. Ritz-Carlton, couples massage, champagne package." I pulled out a printout. That same weekend. Elijah told me he was in Chicago visiting a new investor. "Here's the hotel charge." I handed it over. "Miami. Same dates. Ritz-Carlton. Same room tier." He shook his head slowly, lips tightening into something that wasn't quite anger. It was closer to exhaustion. She even posted a photo of the champagne. I asked who took the picture. She said the marketing team brought in a photographer. She told me Elijah was entertaining clients. I laughed, bitter and low. She said he was too tired to FaceTime, then texted me a goodnight selfie from his room that was clearly staged. Isaac tapped the napkin. "This isn't an accident, this is choreography." And he was right. Every business trip, every fake dinner, every sudden gym membership. It was all part of an intricate ballet they thought we were too blind to see. And maybe we had been, until now. I leaned back, eyes on the mess of receipts and screenshots. "We're looking at 6 months minimum, probably longer." He nodded grimly. "It lines up with the first time she said she was traveling more. She started hiding her phone around then too. Said she was protecting client confidentiality. Elijah started wearing cologne again. I said. Different kinds, always layered, always precise. New clothes? He asked. I laughed. 3 suits, hidden in the back of the closet with tags still attached. I think he's saving them for the wedding weekend. Isaac glanced up. You really think he's going to try something there? I didn't hesitate. Yes, he's been pushing to seat Hannah at the family table, said she deserves a good view of the ceremony. His jaw tightened. She told me she needed something special to wear for a work gala, said she was getting her nails done to match the dress. I already knew the dress, burgundy Versace. She'd posted a teaser to her story. She probably thought it was harmless. She had no idea I had the receipt in my inbox and had already color matched it to the heels Elijah bought for a client gift. Isaac leaned forward, lowering his voice. So, we're really doing this? I nodded. We give them their moment, a wedding together, only they don't get to be the stars. His eyes narrowed. What's the plan? We walk in together, I said. Let them see us first. No screaming, no drama, just presence. Enough to make everyone wonder. And when they panic? He asked. I smiled. We let the receipts talk. Isaac's hand brushed one of the receipts on the table. You sure you want to go through with this? I've never been more sure of anything. He sat back, exhaled. Okay, so we time it. Let them arrive first. Let them settle. Then we walk in. Together, public, no room to lie. No room for manipulation, no gaslighting, just the truth. We fell silent, the weight of our decision hanging in the air. The Starbucks buzzed around us, the smell of burnt espresso mixing with the sting of betrayal. I looked at him, this man I hadn't known 2 days ago, and realized I trusted him. Not just because he was also betrayed, but because he hadn't tried to justify any of it. He hadn't made excuses. He wasn't looking for soft landings. He just wanted the truth to be known. So did I. After we cleaned up the napkins and packed our evidence folders, he stood. I'll arrive separately. Wait until they're seated. Then 5 minutes later, I'll walk in. I'll be by the bar, I said. Champagne in hand, smile in place. He paused before leaving. If this blows up in our faces? I shrugged. Then at least we go down telling the truth. Isaac smiled just slightly. It'll be a wedding no one forgets. Exactly. We stepped out into the crisp morning air, the city roaring around us, taxis, horns, conversations we didn't need to hear. Saturday night, I said, turning to him one last time. 7:30, Lou Bernardine's, don't be late. He nodded. I wouldn't miss it. As I walked away, my phone buzzed. Elijah, a text. Hey babe, rehearsal dinner's this Saturday. Don't forget. Can't wait to see you in that green dress. I didn't respond. Let him think I was playing along. Because the truth was coming, and this time I wouldn't be the one pretending. The rehearsal dinner was 3 days away, and while Elijah floated through the apartment humming jazz and pretending everything was perfect, I was preparing for war. But not the kind of war with screaming and broken plates. No, this would be a quiet demolition, a velvet-gloved takedown delivered in silk, stilettos, and unshakable calm. Because if he was bold enough to bring his mistress to my brother's wedding as his +1, I would bring her husband, and I'd do it beautifully. Tuesday, 3 p.m. Final planning with Isaac. We met at a park downtown near the Battery. It was cold, but not unbearable. Isaac wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky. The kind of tired that no sleep could fix had settled into his face. She tried on the Versace dress last night, he said without preamble, asked if it made her look fat. My jaw clenched. The one she bought to seduce my husband, and she wants your opinion? She even had the audacity to ask me which heels made her legs look longer. There was a moment of silence, and then, as if the absurdity had finally cracked us, we laughed. Not with joy, with disbelief. It was the kind of laughter that came right before collapse. Elijah ironed 5 shirts this morning, I said, then chose the one she once commented on in an old Instagram post. That's how far he's gone. Isaac shook his head. We ready for Saturday? My dress is prepped, shoes polished, hair appointment booked. I met his eyes. You? Charcoal. Suit. The one I wore to our engagement party. He paused. I figured it should be used for something memorable. Wednesday. Testing the waters. Elijah brought home flowers. Peonies, my favorite. The same ones he forgot to get for our anniversary last year. I saw them and thought of you, he said. No, you didn't, I thought. You saw guilt and thought, distraction. Later that night, he offered me a foot massage, hands gentle, voice low, phone buzzing on the side table every 5 minutes. He never picked it up. Just Johnson from work, he said. Johnson had been in Bermuda all week. I knew because I'd sent him a fake email about a dinner party and got an out-of-office reply. I took a picture of Elijah kneeling on the floor, wedding ring gleaming, timestamp on the TV behind him. I sent it to Isaac. Me. The guilt is strong tonight. Isaac. She just spent an hour picking out earrings, said she wants to look elevated but effortless. We weren't just sharing evidence anymore. We were syncing emotionally. Every lie he heard mirrored by one I experienced. Every manipulation repeated in another household. Thursday, rehearsal day -2. Claire texted, "Still want me on standby for Saturday? You know I'm ready," with the dramatic gasp and supportive glare. I smiled. She'd been my best friend long before she dated Adam, and if anyone could play the perfect reaction shot for maximum impact, it was Claire. Me. You'll know when to gasp. Trust me. That afternoon, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest room. The emerald dress hung on the door. Bold, regal, the kind of color that made people stare. I'd chosen it for a reason. It was the same color as the earrings Elijah gave me on our first anniversary. A callback, a silent message. I was here first. When I tried it on, I barely recognized myself. Power had a funny way of changing your reflection. Friday, the calm before the collision. Elijah was practically glowing. I'm picking Hannah up from the airport this afternoon, he said, brushing his hair for the 3rd time. Her flight gets in around 3. Nice of you, I said, flipping pancakes I had no intention of eating. She doesn't know the city anymore, he added. Another lie. Hannah had posted a boomerang from a Soho rooftop bar the night before. She knew the city just fine. When he left, I walked to the closet and opened the drawer where he kept his cologne. 3 new bottles. I photographed each one. Took a picture of the Nordstrom bag hidden under his gym gear. New shoes, tags still on. I texted Isaac. Me. He's in full seduction mode. Isaac. Same here. She just told her friend she's nervous but excited. Said this might be the weekend everything changes. She had no idea how right she was. That evening, we met one final time near the park. This time, there were no jokes, just logistics. They'll arrive around 7:15, I said. Give them time to settle, be visible, let the illusion build. Then I come in at 7:30, Isaac confirmed. Alone, walk straight to you. And I'll smile, I said. Offer you champagne, say your name, let everyone hear it. They'll connect the dots, he said. I nodded. And if they don't, we'll help them. He offered his hand again like we were sealing a contract. Ready? I took it. Steady. Let's flip the script. The plan was set. The players were in place, and the curtain was about to rise. The sun rose on Saturday like it had no idea what was coming. It was the kind of bright, breezy morning that made the city feel forgiving. The sky was a flawless blue, the kind of weather brides dream of, but I wasn't the bride. I was the sister of the groom, and the silent architect of a storm that had been 6 months in the making. Today wasn't just my brother's rehearsal dinner. It was Judgment Day, 6:45 a.m. Elijah was already in the kitchen, humming as he flipped pancakes. My favorite. Guilt pancakes. That's what I'd started calling them in my head. Every time he felt close to being exposed, he'd make them, like carbs could erase deceit. Surprise breakfast, he said, placing a plate in front of me, eyes twinkling. I smiled and took a bite I didn't swallow. "Big night tonight," he added, sitting across from me. "Everyone's gonna love Hannah. She's a little nervous, though. Be nice to her, okay?" I forced another smile. "Of course. I want everything to be perfect." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I knew you'd understand." 10 per a.m. I went to my hair appointment. My stylist chatted about celebrity divorces, not knowing she was styling someone for an emotional ambush. When she asked what the occasion was, I smiled in the mirror and said, "Family gathering." It wasn't a lie. It just didn't include the phrase, "to expose my husband and his mistress in front of 30 relatives." 12 p.m. At home, Elijah was in full preparation mode. He tried on 3 shirts, settled on the navy one Hannah once liked on Instagram, and asked me twice how he looked. "Handsome," I said. "Very polished." He grinned. "You're the best wife, you know that?" I almost laughed. I try. Then came the cologne. He sprayed it in 3 places: neck, wrists, chest, ritualistic, like armor for seduction. He didn't know I had cataloged each scent over the past month. This one was new, expensive, too intimate for a casual evening. 2:30 p.m. "Just heading out to get Hannah," he said, grabbing his keys. "She's already in the city, isn't she?" I asked lightly, pretending to wipe down the counter. He blinked. Yeah, just helping her settle in at the hotel." "The Marriott in Times Square, right?" I asked, sipping tea I didn't want. "Right," he said, without missing a beat. "Except she was staying at the St. Regis." I knew. Isaac had confirmed the reservation. Elijah kissed my cheek. "See you tonight. Can't wait to see you in that dress." I smiled as the door closed behind him. "Me neither." 3 p.m. Final countdown. I opened my closet. The emerald dress hung like a promise. Clean lines, bold shoulders, dangerous elegance. I'd chosen it because it matched the earrings Elijah had given me for our first anniversary. Back when gifts were from the heart, not distractions. The irony wasn't lost on me. I laid out everything with military precision. Clutch, heels, jewelry, receipts, printed and hidden inside my bag like secret weapons. 5 p.m. One last call. I texted Isaac. "All systems go. He's picking her up now." "Copy that. She's curling her hair, says she feels like royalty. She won't buy dessert." He sent a thumbs up emoji followed by 7:30, I'll be there. I stood in front of the mirror in my robe, makeup half done, hair curled into loose, effortless waves. The doorbell rang. Claire. She stepped in, wide-eyed. "Oh my God, that dress. They're not ready." "Perfect," I said. "Because I am." She laughed nervously. "Are you seriously doing this? Like for real?" "I am," I said. "And I need you to keep your phone ready." Claire nodded. "You want the full reaction? Record everything. I want no denials, no gaslighting, no rewriting history. You've got it. You're about to be legendary." 6:30 p.m. The calm before the chaos. In the quiet of my hotel room, I put the finishing touches on my look. The eyeliner went on sharp, the lipstick bold but not desperate. I wasn't dressing for him. I was dressing for me. And for the woman I used to be before I let someone dull my brilliance. My phone buzzed again. "Isaac." "They're in the lobby, just checked in. Elijah looks like he's on a second honeymoon." I typed back, "Give them 45 minutes. Let them get comfortable." "Copy. I'll circle back at 7:30. Let the show begin." 7 p.m. Time to walk into history. I zipped the dress slowly, the green fabric hugging like armor. My heels clicked on the tile like war drums. I stared at my reflection, no longer the quiet, trusting wife. Now, I was the storm. 7:20 p.m. Lou Bernardine's private dining room. Soft jazz played beneath the quiet hum of clinking silverware and polite conversation. Candlelight flickered off crystal glasses. My parents were arranging place cards with their signature precision. Every detail perfect, every flower in place. I stepped into the room with a calm so practiced it could have been mistaken for serenity. But underneath my emerald silk and steady smile, adrenaline surged like electricity under skin. "Darling, you look stunning," my mother said, adjusting a peony in a centerpiece. "Thanks, Mom," I replied, fingers grazing Hannah's place card. Exactly where Elijah had insisted, front and center at the family table, next to me, his ex, sitting beside his wife. My father handed me a glass of champagne. I didn't drink it, not yet. I needed every brain cell awake. More guests arrived. My cousin from Boston, Claire's parents, Uncle Richard from Philadelphia, laughter, hugs, air kisses, a room filled with family and warmth. But I was watching the door. 7:29 p.m. My phone vibrated in my clutch. Isaac. They just walked in. I took a deep breath and typed, "Showtime." Then I positioned myself with a clear view of the entrance, chin high, smile fixed, champagne glass in hand, my own kind of sword. 7:31 p.m. They enter. Elijah walked in first, polished and glowing, the navy shirt crisp and tucked just so. He looked like a man who thought he'd won. The way he carried himself, it was the swagger of someone who believed they were untouchable. And then came Hannah. She floated in behind him in her burgundy Versace gown, blonde hair cascading over one shoulder, her heels clicking on marble like punctuation marks to a sentence she didn't know she was finishing. She was radiant, the kind of radiant only someone living inside a fantasy could be. And tonight, her fantasy was about to end. Their eyes scanned the room, searching for me. I stepped forward before Elijah could call out. "Darling," he said, walking toward me like we were a normal couple. "You look—" I kissed his cheek, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Elijah," I said sweetly, "where's our guest of honor?" He gestured to Hannah, who stood beside him, her smile too wide. "You remember, Hannah?" I turned to her. "So lovely to finally meet you," I said, my tone velvet and ice. I extended a hand, noting the pearl bracelet on her wrist. It completed the set Elijah had purchased 3 weeks ago, supposedly a gift for a client's wife. She took my hand. "I've heard so much about you," she purred. I smiled. "And I've heard so much about you, though some of it seems to be missing context." Then the door opened again, and in walked Isaac. He didn't rush, he didn't shout. He walked in like he belonged there, tall, confident, charcoal suit sharp as his gaze. His presence turned heads instantly. A man few recognized, but everyone instinctively noticed. Conversations died like lights flicking off in succession. The energy shifted. The oxygen in the room thinned. Hannah turned and froze. The champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The crystal sang like a scream, liquid pooling at her feet, soaking into her heels. "Isaac," she breathed, as if seeing a ghost. Elijah stiffened beside her, his face blanching faster than the blood draining from her cheeks. "You weren't invited," Elijah snapped, stepping forward. Isaac's voice was calm, measured. "Actually, I was." I stepped closer, placing a hand on Isaac's arm. "He's my +1. You could hear the click of every jaw dropping. Across the room, Claire was already filming. My brother stood frozen, half out of his chair. My mother's wine glass hovered mid-air. Isaac reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded stack of papers. "I brought receipts," he said, voice low but carrying. He opened the first one. "Let's start with Valentine's Day, Miami. You said you were on a work retreat, remember, Hannah?" Hannah took a shaky step back. Elijah interjected, "This is absurd." But I cut him off. "Is it?" I pulled out my phone. "Because according to this, Elijah was in Chicago that weekend, or so he said. But here's a credit card charge from the Ritz-Carlton in Miami. Same weekend, same room as Isaac's receipt." Isaac's jaw flexed. "And here's the jewelry store charge. Same date Hannah got her new earrings, the ones you're wearing tonight, I believe." Whispers swept through the room like wind through dry grass. Elijah's face twisted, not with guilt, but with fury. "You planned this." "Yes," I said, voice steady. "You planned your affair. I planned its ending." Hannah looked like she might faint. Elijah stepped toward me. "Esther, don't do this." I held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." Across the room, Adam finally found his voice. "Wait, you knew? You both knew?" I nodded. "For weeks, we compared timelines, matched receipts, coordinated calendars." My mother set her glass down slowly, her face unreadable. My father rose from his seat, shoulders squared. "Elijah, Hannah, I think it's best you leave. Now." "But this is now," he said again, the finality in his tone silencing Elijah mid-excuse. They hesitated for a heartbeat longer. Then Hannah turned and walked, red-faced, glass still dripping down her dress. Elijah followed, silent now. The door shut behind them with a heavy, satisfying click. Silence hung thick for a long moment. Then Uncle Richard began to clap. Others followed. Not everyone applauded. Some were too stunned. But enough. I turned to Isaac, breath catching in my throat. "We actually did it." He nodded once. "We really did." The door shut behind Elijah and Hannah with a finality that felt biblical. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the jazz music playing softly in the background seemed to die mid-note, as if the speakers themselves needed time to process what had just unfolded. Then someone, I think it was Claire, let out a long, slow exhale. It broke the silence. My brother Adam stood up from his seat, face pale, eyes wide, then looked at me like he was seeing his sister for the first time. "You knew," he said, not accusing, just stunned. "I did," I said quietly, brushing invisible wrinkles from my dress. "I've known for weeks." My father crossed the room with slow, deliberate steps and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I wish you didn't have to go through that," he said, "but I'm proud you stood your ground." My mother still hadn't spoken. She sat rigid, hands folded in her lap. Her eyes flicked to Isaac, then to the empty doorway where Elijah and Hannah had vanished. She looked like a woman trying to understand how the people she welcomed into her home could be capable of such betrayal. "It's always the ones you think you know," she finally said. I nodded. "They count on that." Later that night, the rehearsal dinner had ended awkwardly but without full collapse. The caterers brought out dessert like nothing had happened. My cousin tried to make conversation about cake flavors. A few guests left early, unsure if it was still appropriate to toast a future marriage after watching one explode. But the ones who stayed, they stayed for me, for Adam, for the truth. Isaac and I stayed for one final toast. He raised his glass and said, "To clarity, the kind that only comes when the masks fall." I added, "And to honesty, no matter how late it arrives." Afterward, we slipped out quietly. No spotlight, no dramatics. Just two people who refused to stay victims any longer. Sunday morning, the fallout begins. At 6:14 a.m., I received the first text. "Elijah, I can explain everything. Please talk to me." Then 5 more messages followed in rapid succession. "You blindsided me. We were just friends. You're destroying our family over nothing. Why would you humiliate me like that? I still love you." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have a response, but because none of his words deserved one. By noon, Hannah had deactivated her Instagram. Her Pinterest boards disappeared. Mutual friends were whispering. I received 2 calls from Elijah's mother, neither of which I answered. Adam came over around 2 p.m. with Claire. He hugged me without a word, then said, "You handled that like a queen." I smiled through tears I didn't know were waiting. It didn't feel royal at the time. It just felt necessary. Monday, lawyers and locks. I changed the locks, filed the initial paperwork for separation, called my lawyer friend from college and asked for help drafting a statement of financial discovery. I wanted to know everything Elijah had touched, spent, hidden. I took off my wedding ring and placed it in a drawer. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I didn't even feel sadness anymore. I felt clean. That night, I opened a bottle of wine alone, not to numb anything, but to celebrate, not the end of my marriage, but the end of pretending. A week later, Isaac texted me a photo of a plane ticket. Paris, solo trip, 2 weeks, detox from the drama. I replied, "Sounds perfect." He responded, "You should take one too." Maybe I will, because life doesn't end with betrayal. It begins with truth. And in the silence that follows exposure, something strange happens. You breathe easier. You walk taller. You stop explaining yourself. You stop apologizing for seeing clearly. And slowly, the bruises heal, not because someone makes it right, but because you realize you were never the one breaking the vows. You were the one holding the whole illusion together with your silence. Closure people keep asking if I'll ever forgive Elijah. The answer is yes, not for him, but for me. Because forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about locking the door behind them and walking into a room filled with light, truth, and your own voice. That's what I did, and I'd do it again. The anniversary came quietly. No confetti, no collapse. Just a Tuesday morning, a coffee brewed with almond milk and the soft sound of the city waking up outside my window. Exactly 1 year ago, I walked into Lou Bernardine's in an emerald dress, clutching a secret that burned hotter than any candle on the tables. I exposed my husband, I exposed his mistress, and I watched the illusion of our life crumble like a sugar sculpture under truth's touch. Now, I live in a different apartment, a smaller one, quieter. On the 5th floor of a brownstone with creaky wooden floors and ivy climbing up the brick like it's racing the past. I kept the emerald dress. I didn't keep the ring. 10:12 a.m. My inbox. An email from my lawyer. Divorce finalized. Everything signed, sealed, processed. You're officially free. I stared at the message for a long time. Free. It sounded too light for what it meant. Too gentle for what it took to get here. But it was true. No more legal calls, no more mediations, no more splitting furniture or pretending we could part amicably. Elijah had fought, of course he had, for the apartment, for the car, for the art piece he never noticed until he couldn't have it. But in the end, he lost. Because truth doesn't just set you free, it arms you. 11 a.m., a call from Claire. "Happy Reclamation Day," she said, voice like champagne bubbles. I laughed. "You remembered." "How could I forget? You single-handedly turned a family dinner into a viral legend." Yes, the video did eventually leak. A cousin had shared it with a private group chat, which turned into 3 group chats, which turned into a TikTok. The clip of Isaac and me walking in side by side had racked up over 2 million views. People stitched it, reenacted it, applauded it. The internet called it the classiest revenge ever caught on camera. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Truth already did the talking. 2 p.m., the unexpected envelope. A letter, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Elijah. I considered throwing it away, but curiosity still lives in the corners of healing. The letter was short, neat, too neat, carefully worded. "Esther, I'm sorry, not for getting caught, for thinking I wouldn't be. You deserved honesty. I gave you arrogance. You deserved partnership. I gave you theater. You deserved loyalty. I handed you convenience. You didn't lose me. I lost you, and I lost the right to grieve that the moment I chose deception. Take care of the version of you that was always too good for me. Elijah." I folded the letter carefully, placed it back into the envelope, and slid it into a drawer next to receipts and old birthday cards. I didn't cry, because I had already mourned him, long before the letter, long before the wedding. 6 p.m., dinner with Isaac. Yes, we still talk. It didn't become a fairy tale romance. And that's okay. Sometimes shared pain is not the start of a new story, but the respectful closing of an old one. But we meet every year, same date, same time. Tonight we chose a rooftop bar overlooking the city, different from last year, higher, cleaner. He raised a glass. To freedom. I clinked mine against his. To truth. He smiled. Still feel like it was the right decision? Every second, I said. No regrets, only clarity. He nodded, then handed me a small box. What's this? Open it. Inside, a charm bracelet. Simple, elegant, with a single tiny emerald hanging from the chain. For the dress, he said, and for the night you changed your life. I touched it, words caught in my throat. Thank you, I whispered, for reminding me that truth doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just has to walk in, head held high, and wait for the world to notice. 11:59 p.m., my apartment. I hung the bracelet on a hook next to the emerald dress, the dress I wore not for attention but for power, the night I reclaimed my name, my voice, my self-respect. As I got into bed, I didn't feel bitter or broken or even triumphant. I felt whole. I thought of the girl I was before Elijah, before the lies, before I learned that silence is sometimes the most dangerous form of survival. And I thought of the woman I am now, not hardened, not jaded, just clear. I whispered one last sentence to myself as sleep crept in. I didn't lose him. I found me. And that made everything worth it. To the woman I used to be, I see you, sitting there in the soft light of your apartment kitchen, spinning dinner like love from thin air, waiting for a man who's already given his attention to someone else. You don't know it yet, but you're slowly disappearing. Every lie he told you didn't just chip at your trust. It chipped at you. I see the way you pause before asking questions, the way you convince yourself to believe him when the stories don't line up, the way you smile through dinner with his phone, face down on the table, always just out of reach. You tell yourself this is what compromise looks like. You tell yourself you're being mature, understanding, on a supportive. You tell yourself that love means sacrifice. But I'm here to tell you, you were sacrificing yourself. You see, I used to think strength was silence. That being the bigger person meant swallowing suspicion, holding in anger, smoothing over red flags like they were just wrinkles in time. But now I know better. Strength is clarity. It's choosing discomfort over dishonesty. It's letting go of the version of love that asks you to shrink so someone else can shine. The woman I am now. She doesn't flinch when something feels off. She doesn't apologize for asking direct questions. She doesn't twist herself into emotional origami to fit someone else's narrative. She walks into rooms with truth like armor. She no longer plays supporting actress in someone else's affair. She doesn't accept peonies and pancakes as penance for betrayal. And you, the woman I used to be, you built her. It was your pain that sharpened her instincts. It was your heartbreak that restructured her spine. It was your courage, buried beneath all that doubt, that finally cracked open the lie. When you confronted him in front of everyone, in your emerald dress and unshakable calm, that wasn't revenge. It was resurrection. You stood there not to destroy, but to reclaim your voice, your truth, your story. You didn't scream, you didn't cry, you just let the truth speak. And when it did, it echoed. The people who once thought you were fragile now know you are forged. The woman who once doubted her worth now walks like she defines it. So here's what I want to say to you, love. Thank you for surviving the gaslighting, for trusting your gut when no one else saw the cracks, for picking up the receipts and piecing together the truth, for holding your head high even when your heart was breaking. Thank you for not settling. Because of you, I now live in a space that's mine. I laugh louder. I sleep better. I trust myself completely, something I never thought I'd say again. And I want you to know, you were never the fool. You were loyal. You were generous. You were all in. He was the one who gambled that and lost. The night we walked into the rehearsal dinner with his mistress and her husband in the same room, that wasn't about theatrics. It was about truth finally getting a seat at the table. You were never crazy. You were never too sensitive. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't meet your depth. But now you've built a life that reflects your value, not one that asks you to question it. And here's the most beautiful part. You'll love again, not because you need to, but because you want to. And this time, you'll choose someone who sees you in full color, not just in convenience. So keep going. Keep choosing yourself. Keep saying no to what dulls your light and yes to what mirrors your worth. The world has no idea what it almost lost in you. But now they're watching a woman who rose from betrayal with her dignity intact and her power fully awake. And I, the future version of you, I am so damn proud. With all my heart, me. Sometimes you don't need to scream to be heard. You just walk into the room, armed with truth, and let it speak louder than any lie ever could. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was a story of rebirth, of a woman who turned heartbreak into clarity, of someone who didn't just survive. She redefined the rules. To anyone who's ever been lied to anyone who stayed quiet for the sake of peace, to anyone who's ever doubted their worth because of someone else's choices, you are not weak. You are not crazy. You are not alone. When Esther walked into that rehearsal dinner, she didn't just confront her husband, she reclaimed herself. So if you're still waiting for a sign to stand up, speak up, or walk away, let this be it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Drop a comment if you've ever loved too hard, forgave too easily, or stayed too long. And remember, you don't lose people like Elijah. They lose people like you. Truth always comes, and when it does, let it shine.